guys, it's Trina, and this is a recap of all of the series that I finished in 2016. I've done a video like this for the past 2 years, so if you want to see my thoughts on more series that I have finished recently, you can check those videos out as well. I did finish a total of 15 series this year, and by the way, I am counting duologies in this, and I think everything that I finished this year was a young adult series. I have done spoiler-free full series reviews of all of the series that I'm mentioning in this video today. If I haven't done it yet, it is coming soon, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, you can check out those full reviews. This is just going to be an overview where I'm going to give you guys a brief summary, tell you guys what my average rating for each series was, who I would recommend them to, and whether or not I thought it was worth it to have stuck around to the end and finish these series. So first up, last year I finished the Dyer trilogy by Michelle Hodkin. This is a series about a girl who was in an accident and now she thinks she has some kind of supernatural abilities. So the question of this series is, does Mara actually have powers, or is it all in her head? I would recommend this series to people who are looking for a creepy read. It was especially great around like Halloween time, which is when I initially picked it up. I also think that you would enjoy it if you like series where you don't really know what the truth of the matter is until the very end. However, I probably wouldn't recommend this series to people who don't really like very angsty teenage romance, because I did feel like that was kind of an overbearing theme in this trilogy. When I average up my ratings for each of the individual books in this trilogy, it comes out to a 3.3 star rating for the series overall. Did I find this series worth finishing? Yes, definitely. I actually loved book 3 the most, which I think is kind of an unpopular opinion with this series, but I loved how it explained things. It was done in a different way than I've ever seen, so I really enjoyed it, and I'm personally really glad that I saw this series through to the end. Next up, I finished the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. This one is a sequel series to the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and I do think that you need to have read all of those books before getting into this one. This is an urban fantasy series about Greek and Roman mythology, and it explores the idea of what if those gods were true and still ruled the earth today. I think you would like this one if you like Greek or Roman mythology. I would especially recommend this one to younger readers who are studying like ancient Greece in school. Another highlight to the series is that it does feature a very large cast of characters, which I really enjoyed. Their distinct personalities, and the characters are pretty diverse. The only reason I wouldn't recommend this series to you is if you don't really like series that kind of verge on the younger end of the YA spectrum. My average rating for the series equals out to exactly 4 stars. Am I glad that I finished this one? Yes. The third series that I finished last year was the Winners Trilogy by Marie Rutkoski. This is a political fantasy about a general's daughter who falls for her household servant, but the two of them can't be together because they are from different nations that have been at war for ages. I think you would like this one if you like stories about star-crossed lovers or about war strategy. You would also probably like it if you're looking for a non-magical fantasy, because there's no magic system in this world. However, you may not like this series if you dislike romances that are full of miscommunication, or you may end up not liking it if you're sold on the romance portion of this series, because the romance really does take a back seat to like the war strategy. My average rating for this series was 3.3 stars, and am I glad that I finished it? No, not really. I loved the first book, and I was disappointed by books 2 and 3, and I really didn't enjoy having stuck it out that long. But you might. I'm not telling you not to read it. The next series that I finished last year was the Gemma Doyle trilogy by Libba Bray. This is a historical fantasy about a young girl who is shipped off to an English boarding school, and there she finds that she is a witch and she can unlock these magical spiritual realms. You may like this one if you're looking for a historical series about witches. You may not like this one if you don't like fake feminism in books, and what I mean by this is that the main character is pretty progressive with her ideas for the historical setting, but if you aren't a pretty white straight girl, then you know it's not really for you. There's a lot of fat shaming, there's misrepresentation of LGBTQIA+ characters. The series got a 1.3 overall average rating from me, and did I feel like it was worth it to finish this series? No, but I stuck it out because I really wanted vengeance for Anne, who was the character that was constantly fat shamed. It wasn't worth it to me in the end because that last book just made me unreasonably angry at the representation of everything. The fifth series that I finished was the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater. This series is about a group of misfit teenagers who are searching for the mythical tomb of a Welsh king because legend says whoever can find his resting place will be granted a wish. I think you would like it if you like unusual unusual stories that are pretty heavily character driven. However, you may not like this series if you need a series that's going to grip you right away, because I actually found this one to be kind of a slow burn. It grew on me very slowly. It wasn't until book 2 that I realized I was invested enough to want to continue this series at all. My average rating for this series was 4.75 stars, and did I find it worth finishing? Absolutely. Next, I finished the Selection continuation by Kiera Cass, and by this I'm talking about just these 2 books that continued the series, The Heir and the Crown. There has been a 20-year time gap, and we are following totally new characters in this one, so I feel like these are kind of a different series. But anyway, this continuation of that series is like 20 years after America Singer went through her selection. Now we are following a new princess who is choosing from a group of male suitors to choose who she wants to marry and help lead her country. I would recommend continuing this series if you enjoyed the original Selection trilogy, or if you enjoy like the Bachelorette TV show, because it's pretty much like that. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have time for silly, tropey, fluffy Bachelorette type stories. My average rating for these 2 books in this continuation was 4 stars even. Did I find it worth continuing? I enjoyed The Heir, but The Crown was a letdown, and to be honest, I didn't think that we needed a continuation past the first 3 books. Next, I completed the 5th Wave trilogy by Rick Yancey. In this series, aliens have invaded Earth and a group of survivors bands together to figure out why and how to stop them. I think you would enjoy this series if you like post-apocalyptic survival stories, but you may not enjoy it if you just don't like alien post-apocalyptic stories. My average rating for this series was 4 stars even, and I did find this one worth continuing, although the first book was definitely my favorite. I didn't think books 2 or 3 were as strong as book 1 in my opinion, but I am glad that I stuck it out because I was really curious about what the outcome was going to be. Next, I finished the Sisterhood series by Ann Brashares. This series is about the friendship between 4 girls as it spans many years from their high school lives into adulthood. I think you would enjoy this series if you love the emphasis on friendships. That really is the focus of the series. That's why I loved it. And as far as why you may not like this series, you may end up not liking it, but honestly I can't think of a specific reason why not, so I would recommend this series overall. My ratings average out to be a 3.6 star rating for the series, and I am glad that I finished this one. Next, I completed the Inheritance Cycle series by Christopher Paolini. This is a high fantasy series about a young boy who finds one of the last remaining dragon eggs in his world. I think you might like this series if you like dragons, like that's really the big pro to it. You may not like this series, however, if you don't like any fantasy series that are similar to the Lord of the Rings series, because Christopher Paolini did admit that he was pretty heavily influenced by the Lord of the Rings as well as many other fantasy series. He was very young when he wrote these books, and I do think that influence shines through. In the end, I do think that this series is totally its own thing also, but if you can't help but to compare it to something like Lord of the Rings, you may come out of it not enjoying it very much. My rating averages out to be 4.0 stars for this one, and am I glad that I finished it? Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad that I stuck it out, even though I did not like the first book and I didn't want to continue it after there, but then once I got into book 2, I flew through the rest of this series and really enjoyed it. Next, I finished the Perfectionist duology by Sara Shepard. This is a duology about a group of 5 girls from different high school cliques that come together to form the perfect plan to kill the most popular guy in school. Then he turns up dead in the exact way that they planned, but they didn't do it, so who did? I would definitely recommend this series if you enjoy murder mysteries or if you have enjoyed any other series by Sara Shepard. I would also recommend it if you're interested in starting somewhere with Sara Shepard's books, but she just has so many that you don't know where to start. Start here because it is just a 2-book series and I think it's pretty easy to get into. I might not recommend this series if you don't like large casts of characters, because we are following 5 different girls here and there's only 2 books, and so there's not a whole lot of time to really get to know them, so at times I was forgetting which character was which. My series rating would be 3.5 stars, and am I glad that I continued this one? Absolutely. The ending is like what I've looked for in every mystery I've ever read, and yeah, I loved it. Next, I completed the Remnant Chronicles trilogy by Mary E. Pearson. The first book starts out when a princess who's going to be in an arranged marriage runs away on her wedding day, but little does she know that the prince she was supposed to marry and an assassin from a rival kingdom both go to track her down. You may like this series if you like the gimmick that is in book 1, which is that you don't know which character is the prince or which character is the assassin. That element of surprise is something that really kept me reading because I kept trying to figure it out. You may also enjoy this series if you like political fantasies without very much magic in them. There's not really a magic system here. Reasons you may not like this series are if you don't like love triangles or you don't like series where it takes a long time for things to actually happen. My overall rating for this series was 3.3 stars. And am I glad that I finished this one? No, not really. I liked books 1 and 2, but everything I liked about them was not really present in book 3, so the last book was not worth it for me. Next up, I finished the Madman's Daughter trilogy by Sara Shepard. This is a series of gothic historical novels that are inspired by classics. The first book was a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau. The second book is inspired by Jekyll and Hyde, and the third book is inspired by Frankenstein. I would recommend this series if you really, really loved those original works. However, I also would not recommend this series if you really, really love those original works because you may not like what's done with them. You also may not enjoy this series if you just can't stand protagonists who are completely clueless. She's dumb, I'm sorry. My overall rating for this series is 2.3 stars. Did I feel like this series was worth my time to finish it? No way. Honestly, I enjoyed book 1 and that is exactly where I would stop if I got to do it over again. Next, I finished the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. This is a high fantasy series about a motley group of characters that find that they have to work together in order to stop the spread of this new drug that is threatening to destroy the magic system of their world. I would recommend this duology if you really enjoy heist stories. I would also recommend it if you're looking for a diverse fantasy. However, you may not like this duology if you dislike character development that is like all telling with very little showing. You also may not enjoy this one if you don't like very heavy, wordy world building, because at parts I felt like I had to skim this one. Overall, I would give this series a 3.5 rating, and did I find it worth continuing? Yeah. Next up, I finished the Jessica Darling series by McCafferty. This is a 5-book series where each of the books are our main character Jessica Darling's journal entries. We read her journals as she is dealing with relationships, friendships, school, family, all throughout her high school life, college life, into her job hunting, and then the 5th book follows her into adulthood. This series was written and is set in the early 2000s, so I would recommend this one to anyone who went to school in those years and is looking for like a nostalgic trip down memory lane. However, a big reason you may not enjoy this series is if you can't connect to the early 2000s pop culture references or to those attitudes. My rating for this series averages out to 3.2 stars, and am I glad that I finished this series? Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people who read it like 15 years ago really respect this series, so I was really curious to see what it was all about. And the last series that I finished in 2016 was the Dash and Lily duology by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. Book 1 is about Dash and Lily, who are characters that have never met before, but Dash finds Lily's journal in a bookstore one day, and they start communicating through this journal and leaving it in different places around their city for the other one to find. I think you would enjoy the first book if you really like this scavenger hunt type of feel, and I also think you would like this series if you're looking for any books that are set during Christmas time, because both of them definitely have that vibe. You may not like this series if you aren't a fan of like very twee holiday romances. My rating for this duology would be 3.5 stars, and did I find it worth continuing? No. I don't think that the second book was even necessary, so I would personally recommend the first book just as a standalone. We are finally at the end of this video. I know that was long because I read so many series this year. If you are curious, my favorite series that I finished in 2016 was The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. That one did get the highest average rating of all the series that I finished, and also looking back, that one was the most fulfilling. I hope you guys found it useful to have all this information about all the series I completed last year all in one spot. And again, if you want any more of my thoughts on any of these series, I'm going to put links down below to all of my full series spoiler-free reviews. I would love to know what series you finished in 2016 or what series you're looking forward to finishing this year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!